How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Supporters Club. It has been a little while, people. Apologies. I know a lot of you like this show, but it is what it is. We are back and we're back to discuss, should Arsenal win the league? Must Arsenal win the league? And we're going to delve into other talking points in and around that subject, where we are currently with 10 games to go. And as usual, we've got Sheroy in the building. What are you saying, Sheroy, back again for Supporters Club?
Yeah, man, I really didn't expect to be here at this point in the international break, where we are on the table, you know, sort of nervous, excited, confused, waiting in anticipation, but it's a great feeling, man.
Balancing the emotions. I hear you, though.
That's it.
And welcoming back to Supporters Club, Dan Potts. What are you saying, Dan?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Listen, international break may have come at the right time for Arsenal, but I can't help but miss it, man. I can't lie to you. I can't wait for it to get back now, mate. But I'm looking forward to being here with you two, man. It's been a long time, Turkish.
It has been. And that's why the conversation should be good. But listen, I've titled this video, we should win the league, but is it a must? Reason being because I believe we should win it, and a lot of opposition fans are saying we must win it. And I want to talk about it from an Arsenal perspective with fellow Arsenal fans who have been on this journey, not just this season, but over the last 3 years with Mikel Arteta. First and foremost, I say we should, because we have been the best team in the Premier League this season. We are playing the best football in the Premier League this season. I know people might throw Europe in there, and I agree. Our European form was nothing compared to our Premier League form this season. But with 10 games to go, no other competitions to fight for, all those factors playing a part. Sheroy, I want to ask you, should Arsenal win the Premier League?
Yeah, when you're going into this international break with the lead that we have, I don't think it's controversial to say that we should win the league, if I'm being honest with you. I got to that point a few games ago, if I'm being honest. I think it was after the 4-0 with Everton. But there's a massive difference between the should and the must, right?
Yeah, massive.
And a lot of the must talk I actually heard last year when we ended up being in the top 4 race, to everyone's surprise.
We must get top 4.
We must get top 4. You will not get a better chance at top 4. Look at the other teams that have dropped off. Look at what will happen if Tottenham get a Champions League transfer window under Conte. You're going to find it very difficult to get there. But we didn't get top 4. We didn't have a Champions League transfer window. We're now challenging for the league. So just looking at it rationally, it always feels like you must when you're in a position that you don't expect to be in and the prize is so great. But I think given the progress that we're seeing at the moment, the tangible, incremental, year-on-year progress with this team, I honestly don't think that this is a flash in the pan season.
Yeah.
I don't think this will be a one-off. I think this is a continued period of growth and we're only going to get better.
And that's where you lean more towards the should than the must right
Definitely.
now. But Dan, same question to you. I believe we should win the league. Like Sheroy said, must is a completely different perspective on it. What do you think? Should Arsenal win the Premier League this season?
I think we must.
Really?
We must.
Yeah, I think we must. I'll tell you why. Because this team deserves to win something this season.
Yeah.
And if we look back on this season and think, second, no trophy, we ain't going to be remembered in the way that I believe we deserve to be remembered. And I don't remember many of those Liverpool teams that come second, everybody going, wow, too much. They'll go 99 points, should have won the league, but they don't say must win the league. I think we have to win the league, man. And people will think that if we don't, it means that we have to start again and everybody needs to get out the door and heads need to roll. That's not the case. You know, we're in a title race. That's what everybody wanted. And I believe that we this season, if anybody was to be honest with themselves, neutral fans as well, they would all pick Arsenal to deserve to win the league. And we have to, man. I do think as well, when you look back at the season, people will always look at what people have won. They will always say Manchester United have won a trophy. They will always look at what Manchester City will win a trophy if they win the league. And Arsenal will be looked as the young team that are going to be here to stay. Trust me, we've got a bright future. But this season, if you look back now and we've won that league, everybody will remember it, man. Youngest team, youngest manager. It has to happen, man.
I actually agree with you in the point you made where we deserve it. I mean, for what we've produced, this team, this squad, this manager deserves to come out of this season with something. The only thing is the something is the Premier League. And we've seen how Man City have dominated over the years and how difficult it will be. Even 8 points clear, Man City got a game and had not points on the board yet, but how difficult it will be to get over the line even with 10 games to go. But Dan, I want to stick on you for a second and say, what do you think Manchester City fans are saying? Because, of course, Arsenal are the bigger club and online you have, you know, a lot more Arsenal fans giving their opinions. But from a Manchester City perspective, isn't it they must win the league too? Or do you buy the whole excuse that this is for Champions League this season? Because for a team that spent so much over the years, for a team that's dominated the league for so many years, surely they must do it as well.
Yeah, Manchester City must win the league every single season, otherwise it's a failure. If you have that budget, their ambition should be to win everything every single year. So their fans won't look at second place after buying Haaland and scoring that many goals and go, wow, that's not a bad season since he's become second. They'll be devastated. Yeah. We'll be devastated if we come second, but it's different in the fact that nobody expects us even to get top 4, let alone be in the title challenge. And I look back and I think to myself, it's always the future with Arsenal. I want to do it right now. I've been looking into the future for too long, man. When we won the league and we went unbeaten, I was 17 years old. If you would have told me it would have been 19 years, I would have told you were buzzing. Yeah. So I don't want to look into the next season will be better. In 5 years' time, how good we will be. We're great now. Let's look at what we can do now. And that's why I think we must win this league, because you will get neutral fans that will love it. Arsenal have crumbled again. Arsenal have bottled it again. What have you got to show for it? Absolutely nothing. Let's not let that happen. Let's go win this game.
Just on that, though, the idea of bottling it and crumbling it, it sort of plays into the must idea, right? Let's say Manchester City win the vast majority of their games. I think the way things stand, we could get a point at Anfield, lose at the Etihad, and we don't win the title on goal difference, right? Because at that point we would have dropped
5 points,
perhaps, right? So you can not win this league without bottling it. That isn't a crumble.
Facts.
That's getting a point at Anfield, which isn't an easy thing to do. Ask Man United fans. And then and you can lose at the Etihad, which most teams do, and that's why I'd want to distinguish. But looking at the must angle, I think with Manchester City fans, given that they've won 4 of the last 5, I don't think it is a must, because they've achieved greatness already in this league. I understand with the spending and so forth, but I don't think it's catastrophic or devastating for them, because they'll be back next season. It's not going to derail the confidence within the group. It's not going to derail the confidence in the manager at all. They'll just be, all right, fine, we go again, right? And with the must thing, the reason I'm reluctant to say we must is because of who we're up against, right? It's like when you look at performance cars, everyone talks about the 0 to 60, but the real performance cars, they kill you 60 to 100.
Yeah.
And that's what Man City can do. Yeah. We figured out Arsenal's 0 to 60. We figured out Man City's, but it's now that other gear.
Yeah.
And that's where you can lose without crumbling. You don't need to be that bad. We could, all right, look at what are we on now? 6 league wins in a row?
Yep. 6.
So if you take into account that 6 and the next 10, and the only results are a loss at the Etihad and a draw at Anfield, you're then still talking about an insane win ratio, and we come second. That's not bottling it.
Yeah, that would have been 2 games we've dropped points in 16 if it works out that
exactly.
way. So
Exactly.
You're right, because the term bottling always comes into it.
Of course
as well.
It does.
I like to use that term for Tottenham
Yeah.
solely, but people have started using it here, there, and everywhere. But Sheroy, surely, because you mentioned that it's not necessarily a must for Manchester City, but surely when you add a striker of Haaland's caliber to a team that have won the league for 2 seasons in a row, and their main competition, obviously, we didn't know this at the start of the season, having lost Mane and bringing in other players, fallen off the way they have in terms of really challenging for a league title. Do you still lean towards it's not a must for Manchester City?
Yeah, I mean, the same way that I was just talking about Arsenal and the fact that it wouldn't necessarily be catastrophic if you're looking at the points tally and the results by not winning it. It could be the same with Man City. They're also coming off the back of a pretty impressive run. Since I don't think they've lost a game since they lost to Spurs.
This is their longest winning run this season.
And they could win the vast majority of their games going forward, but if we do our job, we win, right? So you won't be looking at the Man City season saying, they really fell off. That was unexpected. If you look at their points tally, if you look at their goal difference, if you look at some of the teams they've dispatched, they would still have had a pretty good league campaign. That's what I mean. Maybe I'm a bit too maybe I'm looking at it a bit too rationally, but that's just the way I see it. They ought to win, don't get me wrong. They ought to win every year, as you say, because of the budget and the quality they've added. But it wouldn't be surprising if they don't, purely because of how good we've been.
You make an excellent point with the we could draw at Anfield, lose at Etihad, win the rest of our games, and still finish second on goal difference. And that's why, Dan, is it too early to ask, do you think we'll win the league or?
So I think we will, and the reason I say that is because when we beat Manchester United at the Emirates, I realised this team is something now. It's kind of answering most of the questions. The only slip I had was the Bournemouth game at home, and then the ending made me feel that this is just written in the script for us to go and do it now. What actually will be a test that we still need to pass Etihad and Anfield two places we ain't done well at. Can you remember the last time we won there? Podolski and Cazorla were playing when we beat Liverpool at Anfield. Right, that's the last time. And the Etihad, I think, was Santi Cazorla's ridiculously good game when Giroud got a couple of goals against them. Yeah. Monreal won a penalty, I believe. So we're going back to those sort of days in 2012, 2013 seasons. So the mentality of this side at the moment is unreal, and it will really prove that it is. If we go there, don't have to beat them both, go there and not get battered or lose the game. For me, that's the next step for me, is go into games. And if you get to a stage where you think, wow, we've been a bit dominated here, we've got half hour to go and it's 1-1, we might not beat them, but trust me, we ain't losing. We ain't losing this game. Don't do what we did at Old Trafford and go gung-ho, get excited and then get caught on the break and lose 3-1. Because City and Liverpool could do that to us. That's what I want to see with this team. And the thing is about the must and should with City and Arsenal, the reason that I believe City must is obviously because of what I've said. But actually the argument to that would be at least they've still got 2 bits of silverware they can win. One of them being something they're desperate to win, by the way, the Champions League. So they could still have a good season and come second. Arsenal can have a good season if you look at the football we've played and how much we've progressed. But what have we got to show for it? I think we will do it because I just think we have to do it. And for me, it's a lot about the future and how bright will it be. Will Arsenal be back next season? I don't care about that yet. I care about right now. Yeah. And I think we can win this title, man. And I really, really believe we're going to do it.
And think is the key word, Sheroy, because when people ask me, will you win the league? You must win the league. My confidence is not all the way there yet, because again, you put it better than I ever could in terms of you can draw at Anfield, lose at Etihad, and that's it. That's not bottling it. But that's why I look at those 2 away fixtures and the Newcastle away fixture as 3 checkpoints now. The first checkpoint is Anfield. How do we come out of that one? The next checkpoint will be the Etihad. How do we come out of that one? And the final checkpoint will be the Newcastle game. How do we come out of that one? I want to ask you, do you think we'll win the league from the position we're in now?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I do, because I'm very reluctant to fall into the trap of only looking at Anfield, Etihad, St James's Park. Because if you're looking at the games in which this season we've dropped points and City have dropped points, did we expect them to drop points against Forest?
True.
You know, did people expect us to lose to Everton, then draw to Brentford? And, you know, I mean, it's always the games that you really don't. It's very easy as football fans to look at the fixtures and go, that ought to be 3 points, that ought to be 3 points. And then you do the mental gymnastics of where will we end up after those. But it's always the games that you don't expect, man. It's always the games that you don't expect. And and the reason I think we will is we're very much focused on our own fixtures, obviously, because we're Arsenal fans. And people talk about Manchester City's run-in. Not only are they competing on more fronts, but they have Liverpool before we have Leeds, all right? I know people are saying that City usually beat Liverpool at the Etihad. For me, that's not a given.
Yeah, it's not.
For me, that's not a given. And if I'm not mistaken, they also have Brighton away, Brentford away.
Fulham away.
These are teams that, at Fulham away, I think that could be a bit more comfortable than Brighton and Brentford for them, maybe. But even then, that's me falling into the trap that I was just talking about. Yeah, but those are teams that could be fighting for something that they didn't think they'd be fighting for at the end of the season. They could be looking at Europa spot. So everything's on the line for them as well. We are at that point now. I think they've got Everton away as well. Don't forget, Everton took points off them at the Etihad, didn't they? Yeah. And now, again, Everton are going to be fighting to stay up. I know it's cliche, and I know everyone says it, and I know people call it the business end, but we talk about our 10 cup finals. Every other team's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they've all got something to fight for. And that equally applicable to our fixtures. We've got West Ham away, ought to win, but they're fighting to stay up too. You know, I mean, this is what I mean. You can't sit there and look at the table and look at the fixtures and figure out where you're going to end up, because it could just be something completely left field that you don't expect.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I say checkpoints, and I use those games as checkpoints, it's because there is a little gap in between those checkpoints, and I'm including those games in between as how do we come at the back end after Anfield, having played Leeds, after Man City, having played West Ham and I think Southampton in between, after Newcastle, where there's a couple games in between the Etihad and the St James Park, and then, you know, I think 2-3 games of the season left after Newcastle, if I'm not mistaken. They might, I think it's somewhere along. So I'm not looking past those games for sure, because you're right. I mean, every season we see at this stage of the season, teams that are fighting for their lives tend to pick it up and fight that little bit more. And the funny thing about this season is from 12th down to bottom, it's so hard to call relegation. People, you know, I have my opinions on it. I'm sure you guys have your opinions on it, but I think it's a 3-point difference from 12th all the way to 18th, where it was before the last set of fixtures. Yeah. So there's a lot of teams that are there fighting for their lives. Then you mentioned Fulham, Brighton, Brentford even. Those teams are fighting for Europe at the moment. So everyone seems to be fighting for something. I know we've also got Chelsea at home. And Chelsea at home might not be fighting for it. Maybe they're fighting for Europe. They should be fighting for Europe with the amount of money spent. But one thing I know for sure is they're going to fight to derail our season come that fixture at the Emirates. And obviously the Emirates became somewhat of a fortress to a lot of people, but at the same time, over recent months, I know a lot of fans, including myself, feel more comfortable away from home than we have done at Emirates with the goals we've been conceding over the last few months. So I'm not looking past those fixtures. I'm just using those checkpoints as ask me after Anfield. Ask me after
like when you take stock, basically. Yeah.
See where we are. Because I also believe that, listen, we've talked about potentially drawing at Anfield and losing at the Etihad and still not winning the league. But Dan, I don't think Man City will win the rest of their games this season either. I don't know.
Listen, I was just going to come in about that because for me, everybody's talking about what Arsenal are going to do, what games are Arsenal going to drop points in. Everybody's just sure that Man City are going to go now and win every single game. So if there is a second place Man City at the end of this, or if there is a Man City lose, I expect the media to be in uproar because at the moment, this should be a massive shock. Manchester City losing a game right now, all those media pundits should be going, I can't believe what I've just seen. Manchester City have dropped points. This is unbelievable. Yeah. Because the way they're acting is as if like, well, Arsenal are definitely going to drop points. They're not going to win all their games. I actually agree with that. I think we will drop points. I don't think that it's unreal to say that Man City will as well. I'm not just saying that game against Arsenal was a tough one. I didn't expect them to drop points at Forest. I didn't expect them to drop points at Villa. I didn't expect them to go to Newcastle and not get a win. I thought that maybe they would win those games. So at Brentford as well at home. So there is some tough games. I wish Sheroy, I think the Fulham, Brighton and Brentford teams are all going to be fighting for something. I don't remember a season of the last 5 or 6, 10 games left where one team isn't dead and buried down the bottom, where all 3 of them can still fight, where everybody can try and get into the Conference League or Europe. Everybody can try and get top 4, and then obviously us and City going for the title. That doesn't normally happen. Normally Man City have run away with it by now. You've normally got Norwich, bless them, that are down and dead and buried, that are already in the Championship. So this is a different season. There's a lot to fight for, and things could change within a couple of games to go. But I do think at the moment that every single fixture you go into, being Arsenal or Man City, is going to be tough. And, you know, there's some banana skins for me that Arsenal have got, and people aren't even looking at them. Brighton at home, I don't think that's an easy 3 points.
Not at all.
They're a very good side. That could be a banana skin. So Manchester City have got Leicester, who, let's be fair, are fighting for their lives at the moment, trying not to be down in that relegation zone. With their players coming back, a team that actually do all right against Man City, they could find that difficult. We just don't know yet, you know. So for me, it's definitely concentrating on what Arsenal are not going to do as opposed to what Man City are not going to do at the moment. And I think that would be really naive because Man City are a brilliant side. They're coming into great form at the moment. They've been smashing teams, right? But when they do go away to Brentford on the last game, if it is still down to the wire, that isn't going to be an easy 3 points for them. So I think there's that 10 games, people will say isn't long, 10 cup finals, but there's a lot of twists and turns in that. And I think injuries can play a part in that as well massively, because obviously Arsenal at the moment, we're not sure about Saliba. We see what happens without Thomas Partey. I don't want to see what happens without Saka. Jesus has just come back into the mix. I don't want to see him go out again. So for me, you know, Man City and Arsenal have got to look at what they've got at the moment and try and keep it as fit as possible, because that's going to be key moving forward.
How important is Saliba returning for the Anfield trip?
Key, absolutely key. You know, it's funny because Rob Holding coming in was brilliant, right? And I thought he was great against Sporting away, at home, when he came on as well. Brilliant at Crystal Palace. Do I see Rob Holding consistently being that figure for 7 games? I'm going to say no, because I haven't seen that before in Rob Holding in the 6 years he's been here, whatever. When I look at what Saliba has brought to the mix, he slots into that top 4 and makes all 4 of them better, because Zinchenko can do his thing. So, Gabriel needs that calm head next to him, because at times he can lose his head a bit, right? Although I think he's been immense, by the way. Yeah. Ben White as well, really important that we keep him fit now, because obviously Tomiyasu been out for the rest of the season. But for me, for that game in particular at Anfield, Rob Holding would give his all. He'd give 110%, and you might find he has a good game. But I'm taking Saliba all day long over him if he's fit, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, man.
100% sure. Same question to you. I mean, how important is Saliba for the Anfield trip? Is it the difference between going there a bit more confident or going there a bit more nervous?
If you want to consider yourselves to be genuine title contenders, the way in which you perceive a match going cannot be dependent upon the presence of any one player. It's that simple. Yeah. It is that simple. And we're talking about Saliba, so we're talking about that game based on the assumption that we have our full 11 bar Saliba, all right? If we're in a position where we don't think we can win at Anfield because we don't have one of our centre-backs, we're not title contenders, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Yeah?
And which we've kind of proven this season, sorry to cut you, but Jesus out, we still win. Partey out, we still win.
Exactly. And the reason why Obviously, Saliba's better than Rob Holding. No disrespect to Rob Holding, I'd rather Saliba was there, particularly when you look at the pacing behind with Nunes or Jota or whoever they decide to play there, or Salah. Recovery pace is huge. Saliba has that, Rob Holding perhaps doesn't. But what Mikel Arteta has cultivated, I think to an extent last season, but certainly this season, is every single player has improved under him. I'm not going to sit here and go through every position, because I guarantee you if I did, everyone would be nodding going, yep, they're better this year. Yep, they're better this year. Yep, they're better this year. And that includes the people on the bench. Everyone that comes in is pulling in the same direction and is tangibly better than they were previously. So even if it is Rob Holding, I'm not going there fearful. I said this to you a few fan cams ago. I said, I used to go to certain grounds thinking, even if Arsenal are 10 out of 10, we would still need our opponent to have an off day for us not to get spanked. Because that was just based on pure ability. Now, I sit here and go, if Arsenal are 10 out of 10, we can beat anyone. We can beat anyone. If we're on our game and we're at our best, we'll beat anyone. And what reason is there for us not to be at our best now? What else are we in? And one thing I really loved is, I can't remember, it was either after the last game or the game before. I feel like it was after Palace. Saka's there talking to, I think Keown's there. And Saka's told that Keown thinks it's still going to be a tough ask, and he thinks City will probably do it. But Keown just looks at him and goes, go on then, tell me what you think. Well, what you think we can't win this? The confidence that's in this dressing room, it leads me to believe that it was only us jokers that were sitting here worrying about top four. Everyone in that dressing room was talking about winning the league from the beginning of the season.
I mean, the leadership qualities that have come in over the last 18 months with certain personnel as well, I think that's aided a lot, because Zinchenko, I think it was after United mentioned that he was talking about the title in November prior to the World Cup, and a couple of people laughed. I don't think no one's laughing in that dressing room now. I think even after the blip we had, or during the blip, Saka tweeted, carry on believing. They've got that belief now. They've got that hunger. And I think I speak for everyone here. We've all been critical in the past 2-3 years. We've all had our doubts over the last 2-3 years. But a lot of that stemmed not only from how stale we got under the latter years of Wenger, not only because of the ownership and maybe the lack of ambition they've shown, but we looked at the dressing room too, and we said to ourselves, do these lot want to win? Do these lot want to kind of, build on what Arsenal Football Club should be? Yes, we can look in the past and say, Kroenkes, what have you done to this club? Yes, we can look at the past and say, we kept Wenger on a bit too long. But when are we going to look into the future and take some accountability? And I think that's what these players are doing now,
Yeah, I think you look at the mentality of the team right now and it looks fearless. I love what Sheroy said there about Saka. I loved that interview. Absolutely loved it. Keown's Arsenal hero, and he's still having this, let's not say we've won it yet. And he's saying, I don't fear anyone. We're going into Anfield, we're going into Etihad, we're happy. We believe we can beat anybody on our day. And you believe it when you hear it. Sometimes when people are interviewed, you think, that's good media training there. He said the right things. I don't get that. When I'm at away games and they all come over, I can look at the hunger in their eyes. They want it. They believe it. They think they can do this. And I think Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus coming in has definitely improved that and taken that one to another level. But there's such raw talent there within this squad, and there's such togetherness that we've been able to allow that mentality to mould through the team quickly. And I think that has been key for me, because all of the stuff that has been done off the pitch that Mikel Arteta, Edu and all the guys have done, which to be fair is the only thing I have consistently praised him for. On the pitch, I didn't really see it, if I'm honest, at times, and I was very, very critical by certain games where I got frustrated and certain decisions. But when you look at what he's done off the pitch, it's now showing on it, like 100% on it. And the fan base is connected, the manager's connected, the fans, the players, everyone's together. And I love that. And I think that you saw in the Amazon documentary, which actually looking back probably did come out at the right time now, which everyone thought was going to come out at the wrong time because everyone's laughing because Arsenal bottom top four. Actually, what that did was look at everybody and go, actually, I had no idea this was happening behind the scenes. This side looked together. This manager does have some really good things about him. And you know what? So do the coaching staff and the players. So I think there's a good feel about the club again, something we haven't seen for a while. And you're right, Turkish, in terms of Wenger, Kroenkes. We were justified to be very angry at times, because I've been, as a fan, really critical of some of the lack of ambition through the Kroenkes in the past. Now that he's got full ownership, or they have got full ownership, we're starting to see that actually they do want to give a little bit of love. Now, some of that I think is deserved. I think they need to pay us back a bit.
Yeah,
about time, yeah. But a lot of the time I look now and I think, yeah, everything seems to be on the same level now. And I think with Wenger, he was always a little bit too much in control. And there were certain times where I looked at him and thought, you're being very stubborn here now. And we can go back further and we can talk about Emery and all that. But when you look at it right now, there's not many Arsenal fans that can be disappointed with what they're seeing in terms of the fight, hunger, desire, passion and drive and the togetherness and connect that we've got right now, man. It's a beautiful thing to see, and that's why I want us to win this league so badly.
100%. I mean, I want to move it on as well. We've done a lot of looking forward. Let's look back a little bit now, because we've played 28 games, the majority of the season done. No more of that. It's only 14 games talk from opposition fans. Recently on Forever Arsenal, we did a top 3 players of the season so far. And the reason I want to do that now, as well as at the end of the season, is because we don't know how the season's going to end, and there could still be players in the next 10 that pull things out the bag, that put them higher up in the list. But as we sit here, you even mentioned people coming in. Jorginho steps in, he does a job. Trossard steps in, does a job. Eddie stepped in, he's done a job. Fabio Vieira stepped in, done a job. Tierney, when he starts, he's done a job. So even the fringe players, the bench players, the backup, the squad depth, they've performed this season. But if I was to ask you guys, Sheroy, let's start with you.
Wow.
Apologies for that.
Is bad.
Listen, we're in England. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's meant to be spring, but it is what it is. Apologies for the sound if you could hear the rain and the thunder and all that. But we moved. Top 3 players of the season so far, Sheroy. Starting from 3 to 1. Who would it be for you?
All right. The way I'd have to look at this, because if I'm just looking at their contribution, it's impossible. The way I'd have to look at this is who I see as the 3 most important, i.e. where is the biggest drop-off when they're not playing. That's the way I have to look at it, because if I just can't tell you who the best have been, because they've all been quality.
It's
it is actually impossible. It'd be totally arbitrary. I'd be picking names out of the air. I think when Martin Odegaard's in the team, he is the number 1 in terms of importance for me. And I noticed it, even though we went out, I noticed it against Sporting. When he came on, everything just started ticking again. He's brave on the ball, he doesn't shy away. It's not just the assist, it's the pass before the pass to get everything moving. And I don't think we have someone who can replicate what he does at his level in that position. I'd say the same about Bukayo Saka. I have to put Bukayo Saka in there. I'd put him in there at 2. You can't even talk about him as a kid anymore.
Yeah,
you can't. And I say that about a few of these players, actually. We talk about they're young and it's raw talent, but they actually look very accomplished now. And they look sort of wise beyond their years in many ways. And for 3, again, based on what I said about can't really replicate what happens when they're in the team, I'd have to go Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey has been an absolute Rolls Royce. We used to talk about the fact that we didn't necessarily see the Thomas Partey that we thought we were going to get, but this season I think we both agree that this is the Thomas Partey that we wanted.
Yeah.
Right? And I genuinely believe that those 3 are of crucial importance going forward. But I wouldn't sit here and argue if someone said, but what about Ben White? What about Martinelli, who's on course for maybe 20 this season? What about Granit Xhaka? This is what I mean. We could keep going, but through the lens that I was looking at it has to be those 3.
It could be a top 10, and it still be difficult.
Exactly.
But, I'm going to go into mine after Dan does his. Dan, you can go from 1 to 3, 3 to 1, up to you. But who would be your?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? So before I go into my 3, when we went unbeaten, there was 3 players that I felt didn't get enough credit in that time. And there's 3 players this season that will fit into that bracket as well, that I think have been extremely underrated. And back in the Invincible seasons, for me, it was Kolo Touré, Lauren and Gilberto Silva.
Fair, yeah.
We never really talked on them because it was all Henry, Pires, Bergkamp and Vieira, etc. Right? Yeah. Rightly so. Similarly to this season, I think those 3 underrated players, and they're not in my top 3, which hence why I'm bringing it up, are Aaron Ramsdale, Ben White and Gabriel.
Good shout.
I don't think any of those 3 get the credit they deserve. If I look at what Aaron Ramsdale has done in 2 seasons at Arsenal, I can think of 5 or 6 world-class saves. And I go back to Seaman, Lehmann and Meninga and all the other top goalkeepers, and I can think of 5 or 6 top world-class saves in their career.
Yeah.
Now, this guy is ridiculously good for his age. The mentality, sometimes he gets a bit cocky and arrogant, and I can understand why it frustrates fans.
Yeah.
But you look back now and think the moments we will not remember from Aaron Ramsdale are because we've done something up the other end. Bournemouth, we won't remember Reece Nelson's goal if it weren't for Aaron Ramsdale.
Yeah.
Villa, Jorginho, we don't remember that last minute strike if Ramsdale doesn't make that world-class save onto the bar. There's many more previously to last season. James Maddison, the free kick, which is one of the best saves I've ever seen. Ben White, one of the most underrated and underappreciated players this season. People talk about how important and vital and integral Zinchenko is at left back. He is just that on right back in terms of his link-up play and telepathy with Saka and the transition play. How many times has he overlapped now and started creating chances for us?
Yeah.
Unbelievable player, been so consistent. And Gabriel, people always want to talk about Saliba, rightly so. I love the kid. I think he's going to be unbelievable and one of the best we've seen. If you talk about consistencies and you look at the stats and the ratings, he's just the same as him. Now, he does have sometimes the bozo moment where he might get sent off or give away a penalty, but so did Martin Keown, so did Sol Campbell over the years. I love everything about Gabriel, man, and I think he has probably been, out of all of the signings, one of the best that Arteta's made because he was one of his first. He's been there from, and to me looks like one that people are now looking towards as a 25-year-old steady head. I really like that guy, man.
Sorry to cut you, but now you've said that, if I asked Arteta's top 3 signings, that would also be a difficult argument to have.
Very difficult, man. You know, but you have to put him in there if that was the question. In terms of my top 3, number 1, I'll go Saka. I don't know how we can't pick him. It's just, the kid's unreal. Like, I was standing next to a good friend of mine, Mark Porter, I go to the football with, and he going, oh, that Saka might be all right in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, like, as a 21-year-old, he's already done it all. He's already been there. Experience and mentally what he's gone through in terms of the England, the racism stuff. People forget that. This kid is special. Everywhere you look, he's getting hugs, he's getting smiles. Everyone's saying great things about him. And that means a lot, Turkish. When they're off the pitch and they're an unbelievable character and a great person, that goes a long way. So he has to be number 1 with what he's done assists and goals wise into his game. I think Mikel Arteta has turned him into a better player. I think, you know, back in the Man City days, Sterling and Leroy Sané were seen as 2 players that Mikel Arteta made better. He's done that with Saka, in my opinion, and on the other side with Martinelli. So he's my number 1. Number 2, I'm going to go with Martin Odegaard. Okay. A player that I called out last season in terms of goals and assists. I said, listen, man, you're technically brilliant. One of the best I've seen on the ball. But I need to see goals and assists. And he's done it. Yeah. He's just made everyone who had that doubt zip it. I'm now scoring and he's driving us forward, man. He's integral. And like Sheroy said, I think number 3, it has to be Thomas Partey. I think if you take those 3 out, like we did against Sporting, you see what happens. And we're flinging them back on because we need them. And it's too late. So for me, it has to be that. I think when you take him out of that side, Jorginho has done a good job, but he ain't Thomas Partey. Yeah. Reece Nelson, we'll always remember him, hopefully for the right reasons, end of this season. He's not Saka. And I can't say the same from Fabio Vieira, that he's the same as Martin Odegaard. So those 3 have to be in there, man. Has to be those 3.
You know what? Mine was Saka first. It was Partey second and Ben White third. Through multiple factors, you know, I can't believe what Ben White's turned into when we initially signed him. I was very critical of the signing. I just didn't understand it for the price as well. Look at him now. He's in my top 3 players of the season. With Thomas Partey, it's because we have nowhere near the same amount of quality control without him. And with Saka, it goes without saying, 12 goals, 10 assists in the league, the only player to be on double figures in both. But me and Dan went with Saka first. You went with Odegaard, and then I just think with Odegaard, you mentioned the quality we miss when he's not there. But I also want to mention the leadership qualities we miss when he's not there. It's not just him on the ball, it's him leading from the front. He is probably our best presser. I mean, Jesus has come in and I think up the levels in that department, but I think Odegaard leads the press. I think even in Jesus' absence, I've done behind the numbers with James the other day, and our possession wins in the final third has gone up post-World Cup than it was prior. And that surprised me because initially I was thinking that comes with Jesus. But then when I took a step back and I looked into it further, Odegaard is the one that kind of leads it all. He's vocal, he's our captain. And this is the first season in how long that we've never debated who should be captain.
Yeah.
Because he's just taken that role at his young age and just ran with it. And both his quality shines and his leadership shines. And I know a lot of people talk about Zinchenko coming in leadership, Jesus coming in leadership, Xhaka, Partey, experience. You know, they're into their 30s or heading into their, I think they're both 30 plus. That experience is leadership. But Odegaard just, I think, epitomises everything Arsenal has been this season all round. Then I think about Martinelli, our top goal scorer this season. You know, in the league,
it's crazy that he's not made it actually in the top, any of our top 3s because there's so many. There is so many. And just quickly on the Odegaard thing, you make a great point in terms of captain. I wanted Kieran Tierney last season because I loved him, absolutely loved everything about him and still do. But this was absolutely the right decision for me, putting him as captain. The thing about Martin Odegaard, no one really gives him credit for as well, particularly home games. last person around the stadium every single time, does a whole lap, everyone's gone, all the coaching staff, all the players. I think you deserve credit for that. That just shows he's got the leadership qualities and he appreciates what it means to be an Arsenal captain, and you can see the connect with the fan base. And there's so many people that I speak to after the game, and you know, there's a group of us that have like a running chat about it, Ødegaard again, because they appreciate that. How many times have we seen Mesut Ozil's go straight down the tunnel? You know, players of the past that have come and give us a clap and gone straight down the tunnel. And that's not just been at home games, that's been at away games as well. And for me, the fans really appreciate that. I think it's absolutely the right decision to give him the captaincy, man.
So just on that, looking at the captaincy, it's very easy to be a captain and a leader and go to your fans when things are going well. But Martin Ødegaard had to lead us through that period where we didn't get top four, right? So and to do that and ensure that the team and the fans remain galvanized and that the performance levels don't drop, but they actually get better, is massive. I remember I think it was Josh released a statement last year or whatever saying sometimes as a squad or as a team, you need to go through pain to sort of achieve that level of success. And when I heard that, I was actually a bit pissed off. I was like, no, we've been through enough of that.
Yeah, as fans, for sure.
It was just an emotive response from me. But I look at it now and I hear the interviews that are coming out. Ødegaard has said it, Ramsdale said it, a lot of them have said it. They've said, we know what it's like to be gunning for something and not get it because of last year. And we don't want to let that happen again. They are using that failure from last year, and that's galvanizing them now, right? And one of the things about captaincy, there were times when it was obvious who the captain ought to be, or there were times when there really wasn't a captaincy candidate, so it was just given. Right here, Martin Ødegaard's job is made ever so slightly easier because absolutely everyone is displaying that leadership quality.
True.
You know, you're seeing it from goalkeeper to right back, through centre midfield, and across the front three with the manager. You know, so he's just sort of adding the finishing touch. He's the face of it. But the leadership qualities, remember all the commentary 4 or 5 years ago. Roy Keane, all of them, where are Arsenal's leaders? Who's gonna grab the game by the scruff of the neck? You don't hear any of that anymore.
Yeah, and I think one of the main factors in leadership is accountability. And I think, you know, all of our players now hold themselves accountable. Or, you know, whether Martinelli gets dropped, he comes off the bench, scores, and he gets 6 in 6 since. That's just one example throughout the season of players either maybe going through a quiet patch or having a poor performance and coming back, bouncing back. And it just feels like all the chips are falling into place. And the final question I want to ask, does the player of the season come down to who wins the league? Because at Manchester City, you have Haaland, who's he's bound to break the record. I mean, he's on 28 goals so far. He's got 11 Premier League games to go. He's going to break the record. But, you know, you have a Bukayo Saka who's on 12 goals, 10 assists. And if Arsenal were to win the league, for such a young player to be pretty much the focal point of it all, you know, I know we have Ødegaard, we have Martinelli, Partey, Ben White, Gabriel, and so on. But Saka is probably the star of the team. Does the player of the season come down to who wins the league between City and Arsenal, or do you think a Saka could deserve it even if City get over the line, or a Haaland gets it even if Arsenal get over the line?
I mean, let's say we win the league, but Haaland goes on to score the amount of goals we think he's going to score. I don't think many people would argue. But then again, if we win the league, look, I don't like that people compare us to Leicester, but if we win the league, it will be a surprise. Yeah. And then you're looking at who was primarily responsible for that surprise. Yeah. And then you are looking at players like Bukayo Saka, you are looking at Martinelli. You know, so for me, honestly, if we win the league, regardless of how many Haaland scores, I actually think you'd have to give it to someone like Bukayo Saka. Honestly, because of the fact that you're talking about a player who has come into a team and started, you know, playing as a left back or whatever he was playing as, and has grown up and has now led a team not just to the top four, but to a Premier League title against an absolutely Herculean Guardiola side. You know, that is some achievement. That is some achievement.
I agree, Dan.
Listen, if Haaland gets 40 goals plus, then everyone will say he deserves it, and probably rightly so. But I don't think you can give player of the season to someone who hasn't won that title. That's just my opinion. So I would give it to Saka. I think there's a couple, actually. You say Martinelli, Ødegaard's definitely in there as well, captain and leader, and what he's done with us. But he's star boy Saka, and I think it will be him if we win the league. So yeah, it goes down to who wins it for me. So Haaland will get it if City do it, and I think Saka will get it if Arsenal do it. But I will say this, at least with Arsenal, if we win it, we're debating who deserves it.
Yeah.
With Man City, if they win it, it's Haaland. There's no one else. There's no one else even close. So that's got to mean something.
I'm interested to see the team of the season come into the season as well, because I expect it to be all Arsenal City dominated, but I expect a fair few Arsenal players in there for sure.
I mean, I know this isn't the best metric, but if you look throughout the season, how many times has Arteta been up for Manager of the Month?
5 now,
I think he's up again this month.
He is. He's going to get it this month as well.
Because what was it, 4 wins and 4 or whatever it was in the month in
Yeah.
the league, whatever. So you look at how many times Arsenal players have been up for Player of the Month or whatever. You look at how long we spent at the top of the league. If I'm not mistaken, the only time that we were knocked off the top was that 72-hour period when City went ahead of us for a little while, right?
Yeah, from the start of the season. Yeah.
Other than that, we've been at the top of the league throughout. So if you're looking at all of that, you know, it's difficult for us to take emotion out of it. But if you're just looking at that and you're looking at it from a clean, logical perspective, you'd go, they probably ought to do this.
Yeah, and someone reminded me the other day of Haaland's age, so they're both in for young players.
Yeah.
Saka and
What was it, 22?
Yeah.
Scary, man.
Monster
Scary.
robot. It's
Scary.
crazy. But listen, Sheroy, Dan, thank you for coming on as always. People, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag Dan's channel in the title. Obviously, you know Dan does stuff on League Judges TV as well, but he has got his own channel, so that's in the title. And Sheroy has just started. He's just about to start his channel, but I'm going to put that link in the title as well. So make sure you go over and subscribe to both people, show them some love. Make sure you show this video some love too. Hit the like button. Let's get it up to 1,000 and give your thoughts on the debate as well. Should we win the league? Must we win the league? Top 3 players of the season, and who do you think will be getting player of the season come the end of the season? 10 games to go, 11 for Man City. We'll touch base again real soon, people. Also, let me know who you want to see on the supporters club. That's a big thing as well. I always go through the comments. And that's it for today. Love for the love, people. We're out. Peace.
Shop for AFTV merch at shop.aftv.co.uk. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, and Twitch. We've got content for every platform, so check it out.